open Tinkercad, you will see your grid, and typically the default settings are in inches. So we're just going to go down to here, click on settings, and make sure this is selected to millimeters for more precision, and then close. Okay, so let's zoom out. Now if we look over on the side panel here, we see some basic shapes. Which one emulates the outside of our wheel the best? I would say the cylinder. So we're going to click this here and zoom in a little bit more so we can see what we're doing. Next, we want to make sure that our ruler settings are turned on. So let's select the ruler tool and click here. Now if I were to measure the diameter of the wheel, it works out to be 40 millimeters. So we put 40 here and also in the depth. And the height works out to be about 17. If you wanted to, you could just make it a simple 15. I think it's trying to be 15 millimeters, but for absolute precision, we'll do 17, I suppose. Okay. So right now it's solid, and that won't work for us. So what we want to do is create a hollow interior. So if I measure not the inside interior, but the outside interior, so what's visible as you're driving the car, that is 25 millimeters. Okay, so we're going to zoom out and grab a whole cylinder. So this one's going to be 25 and 25. What we want to do is punch a hole through this. And the easiest way to do that is to line these up. So let's go over to here, align, click on the center, and the center, and the center, just to make everything even. And then what we can do is group it and put our hole in. So we have something that is starting to resemble this wheel. Now the other thing we want to do is carve out the interior on the other side. So we don't even have to flip it. We can just pretend this is the back side poking out. And that also looks like a cylinder if you were to examine it. So if we measure that, is approximately 27 millimeters. So we're going to create another cylinder here. 27, and this is 27. Okay, so this height is 10 millimeters. And once again, we have to create a hole. Now the interior cutout area is only, we'll say 22. Could be 23 as a gray zone. So we're going to get the whole cylinder here and make this 22. Once again, we want to line these up. And then group them. Okay, so we have our interior and our exterior. Now what we want to do with this area here is to hollow it out so this sits inside of it. So if I look at the size of this interior hollowed out area, on one side you don't see it, so it only goes to a certain depth, but on the interior it goes down to 35 millimeters. So we click here and make that 35 and 35. It's a hole style cylinder because we're just carving out a section within here. And it goes to a depth of about 15 millimeters, give or take. 15. Okay, so that's the height. All right, so what we're going to do is once again line it up. However, this time we're going to do something a little bit different. So I group them and I line here and here, but I want it actually on the top, so I'm going to put it here. Oh, and I think I've missed, want it centered as well. Okay, so it's aligned at the top as opposed to the middle. And the reason being is because you don't want to go all the way through. And now we can group them. So we're going to select here and group. This is create a hole. If I were to rotate, you can see that there's still a lip. So that should show as solid on the other side. We're going to line these up. So we'll select both objects, both shapes, align, center, center, and center. And actually what I'm going to do is adjust this so that it's sitting on the bottom so that you see it going all the way through. So I'm going to place it down here. And the reason why we're doing that, let's turn that off, is when you rotate it, you want it flush with that edge. Okay? When rotating objects and you want a 9-degree angle, you select them. Let's grab this. And there's these little arrows here. So you want to grab them and then hold shift so it goes in 45-degree increments so that you have a perfect rotation. Okay? And as you can see, now we have something that's resembling the outside of our wheel. Now we're going to put that to the side and start working on the interior spokes. So if I were to measure the interior, the center point is 5 millimeters. Okay? So once again, it looks like a cylinder, so we'll grab this and we'll make this 5 and we will make this 5. Now the length that is showing 8 millimeters visible. And now we can work on our spokes. So you can either build it in this form where it's looking up and then rotate later, or rotate now. It's up to you how you want to do it. There's no right or wrong way. So let's look at the width of a spoke here. We've got, it's about 1, 2, 3, it's sort of a grade zone. We can make it 3. So this time, if you look at your wheel, it's flat on one side. So we're going to use this shape. So let's go over to here and zoom in so we can see what we're doing. So this is going to be 3. And the height, of course, is 3. Here we go, 3. Okay. And then the length is 10 millimeters. And that just sits at the base here. You want to slightly go in, otherwise you get these funny hard edges. So if I were to rotate in the top view here, let's go into orthographic view just so you can see more precision. But as you can see, if it's out like this, you've got this funny edge here, which you probably don't want. So just ever so slightly tuck it in just to clean up that edge. Okay, now what we want to do is use a compass to see what the degree is for the next spoke, and that would be the same degree on each one. So this is a 70-degree angle. So the next one is going to go up 70 degrees from here. So if we do duplicate and repeat, and we move this up until it says, I guess in this case, minus 70 is the direction we're going. Okay, and we bring this up here. You just want to nestle it in there. Once again, ever so slightly tuck it in. One thing, if your settings are on snap grid is set to say 1 millimeter, you're going to have a hard time getting a precise fit. So you might need to adjust it. I adjusted mine to 0.25. You can go down to 0.1, or you can simply turn it off to nudge it into a spot. So I'm going to leave it there for now. And then you obviously there's more spokes, but what we're going to do is build 3 and then reflect them. There we go. And if you want to see what you're doing, you can temporarily turn this into a hole just so you can see how the edges line up. If you find that's beneficial, just don't forget to turn it back when you're done. And now we can do a reflection. So let's select all 3. And duplicate them. If you don't, you end up reflecting the existing ones. And hit mirror. And we're going to push it there and bring it down. There will be this duplicate here. We just have to delete it. That's fine. And then line it up. Let's delete that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'll turn this back to solid and I'll get out of this view. Let's rotate around to see how this is looking. It's looking pretty good. If you're satisfied with what you have, you can group it. So we will select our objects and group them. And now we can rotate them into a 90-degree axis. So here what we want to do, because they're actually going to be on this side facing out, not the other side. The other side's the interior of the wheel. So now we want to find these. Here, let me zoom in here for you. And turn this by hold shift, 45-degree increments. And it is now in the correct position. What we want to do, raise this up a bit. So right now it's going through the floor. We're done with that. And we're going to move it over in front of our wheel. And you might want to work in orthographic as well as perspective views. Perspective is good for sort of quickly placing something, getting the idea of where it should go. And then orthographic allows you to really line your items up nicely. Okay, so now what we want to do is align it correctly by centering it. What I'm going to do, just as a precaution, is I'll group these items together and then center this within the grouped items. Okay, so we have it centered, but it's obviously in the wrong position in terms of the depth. See how it's sticking out the back? That is not correct. What we want to do is make sure that this is in so that the base is just flush with the back of the ring that was built. So if you look here, and you can see that protruding edge, what you want to do is push it through. Your best bet is to turn this into a whole object and to do this in orthographic view. So let's click over to here, and I'm going to go to back, but we have to raise this because it's gone below the horizon line. So the x-axis, I should say. There we go. Okay, now let's turn this into a whole and go into a view where we can grab the interior and then click back. Okay, now this has to be flush with that back piece. All right, so that should be correct, and we can now turn this back into a solid shape. Okay, so let's go back to perspective view so we can sort of rotate and get a view. That's looking pretty good so far. You won't have the curvature of the outside of the wheel here as the real-life model has, but that's fine. This is as close as you will get. And now what we need to do is add on that connector that connects to your axle along the back here. So let's measure that. That is a length, well, first off, it's a width of 7 millimeters and a length of 10 millimeters. So 7 by 10. So let's pull this up. So the length is 10 and the width is 7 and 7. Oops, sorry, I grabbed the wrong one. This is 10. Okay. Now what we want to do is measure the interior, the hole. So this is 4, you could argue possibly 3. I'm going to say 4. So we're going to make a hole that has a diameter of 4. And then the length doesn't really matter because you're punching the hole all the way through. So you would just grab your objects, align them. And if you really want to be certain that it punches all the way through, you align it in the middle there as well. Okay, and now we can group them. Hold on, grab this, grab that, and we have a hole. So once again, we want to rotate this. So we're going to grab this and, oops, wrong one. This one. Hold shift and rotate till it's in the correct position. And now we need to align it into the center region here. So my recommendation is that you group these items all together so that we don't have the issue of misaligning a separate component. And now when we select this along with this and align it, it'll be in the right position. Once again, I recommend going into orthographic view and rotating, clicking on this, turning it into a hole so we can see what we're doing. Then we go back here, we grab our piece, go back to the correct view, and we pull this out. This should be sitting on the surface like that. Okay. Now we can turn this back into a solid. And if you like, you can go into perspective view, rotate, and it's starting to resemble your wheel, and everything should line up. Now I am seeing, let's go to direct left here. I'm going to go into orthographic view. So as you can see, this is not perfectly centered here. So something's amiss and we have to fix that. This might be the issue. Perhaps if I were to move this, does it line up? Okay. It might be that this itself is not perfectly centered because these spokes here look a little longer, so something might have gone wrong here. So if this happens to you, you might want to just tap it into a position that seems to make more sense, because I can see here that this is longer than this, implying that it's not, from a visual standpoint, that looks far more centered. So if anything, you want to use this back piece as your guide rather than, and in your circumstance, this might not happen. It might be that this was perfectly centered. But these are the ways that you can make modifications if something is not correct. Always trust your eyes. Okay, so let's go into perspective view, make sure everything looks good. Okay. And this looks good now. That makes a lot more sense. And then is there any other detail? There is an interior ring. If you want to be absolutely precise, there's an interior ring at the base of this axle holder. So it's situated around here. You can measure that. It's very flat. It's about 1 millimeter in depth and about 11 millimeters in width. So you would simply take something like this and make this 11 by 11, and then the height is only 1, so it's very, very small. And you would rotate this. Let's go into this arrow here. Okay, it's 90 degrees, and once again we want to position this approximately where it needs to be, and then place it. So what we want to do is take this and this and this and group them so that when we align this with this, it's centered. And that's how you would build your wheel for your vehicle project.